The ceremonial first ball throwing is already history, and history is the proper word to apply to it.
I thought it was great. Most valuable players in those great years here at Oakland: Gene Tennyson, Reggie Jackson, and Rollie Fingers. There they are, Rollie Fingers in the middle.
And just a reminder to the 1988 A's, there's some greatness around here. Here's the Dodger lineup. Steve Sachs was hit in all four, followed by Franklin Stubbs. He'll be at first base. Mickey Hatcher is hit in all four. He's in left field. Mike Marshall returns to the lineup in right. John Shelby in center. Mike Davis will be the designated hitter. Rick Dempsey will be the catcher. The word on Socia is, in absolute desperation could he be used, otherwise no. Hamilton at third, and the shortstop Alfredo Griffin. Right-hander Storm Davis, who went 3 1/3 innings in his matchup. So he comes back a 16-game winner during the regular year, trying to keep the A's afloat, trying to carry this series down the road to Los Angeles.
He has a slow, deliberate windup. Fastball with tail when it's down, and a curve is a big downer. And his defense that he'll have behind him, a couple changes by La Russa. Javier is in left field, Henderson in center field, Canseco in right field, and in the infield you see Phillips at second base, and the rest of it stays the same. Hasse is behind the plate. I would think he wants to get Javier and Phillips in there to get some base runners, and they haven't had 3 base hits in the same inning the whole series, which is a bit unusual.
Unusual to say the least for an Oakland A's team that has torn up the league. And Steve Sachs, Franklin Stubbs, and Mickey Hatcher.
Vin, in front of home plate, just watching batting practice, it seemed like when you hit down on that ball, it was taking that big hop. I don't know if it's harder than normal, but I'll tell you, you got to be alive for that.
So Sachs to lead it off, and a little
hard here, and didn't get any base hits.
He hit one to center last night that died at the last minute. He hit that long fly ball to right that looked like it had a chance to go out. Now he hits one that dies, and I really have to believe it's because it's getting so much cooler. 1 down in the 9th. Ron Hasse flied to left, walked, struck out. Carney Lansford on deck. Right. So in the 8th inning, he started off by walking Phillips and got in trouble. Now he gets McGuire and picks up the strike to Hasse. And the breaking ball.
Dead low ball pull hitter, and he throws a fastball outside, not a breaking ball.
Talking about that breaking ball, Dave Parker, I think, will be thinking about that all winter.
Yes, he will.
No balls and 2 strikes to Ron Hasse. Breaking ball got him looking. 8 strikeouts for Oral Hershiser.
And it really began in the 5th inning when he really settled in.
1 out to go for him, his teammates, and his family in the stand. And standing in the way, Carney Lansford.
He's made 108 pitches up until right now.
Lansford singled, scored a run, and twice flied to center. His single went to center. Ground ball to the hole, backhanded by Griffin. Off balance throw is too late. And the A's are still alive.
Griffin ended up right on the foul line. He really made a fine play. Was not satisfied just to come up with it. Tried to get his man at first base, but it was almost an impossible throw for him, and he did make it close.
By a whisker. And so Tony Phillips, as he was walking up to home plate, kept looking back at the Oakland dugout. And now he has reached home plate, so he knows he's up there to bat. Tony Phillips had an infield single to the hole, struck out and walked. Hershiser trying to help out young Jeff Hamilton as he gestured for the moment.
He gave everybody instructions. Stubbs, Sachs, watch the bunt.
Terry Steinbach comes out on deck. So Steinbach would be hitting for Walt Weiss. There goes the runner. They're not paying attention to him. Ball 2.
He's got to make sure that Steinbach doesn't get up there. 5-2. He'd be the tying run. So he's going to go off the full windup and bear down on Phillips.
Phillips single, struck out, walked, set up 1 run, scored 1. And going to third on ball 3. So Lansford getting a free ride. And now suddenly, and you know he was struggling in the 8th inning, Hershiser struggling in the 9th. And Steinbach waiting for one last shot. And Kirk Gibson knows what you can do with one last shot.
Interesting venue. You know, it's a cool evening here, and there was Gibson sitting there, and he was sweating.
There's a lot of sweating going on here.
You can say that again.
3-0 to Phillips. Strike.
One play, you have no defense against a base on balls, and Hershiser knows that.
Three and one. And another one.
Well, he's taken all the way. They're going to make him run out the string. Here we are. And now watch Hershiser regroup.
Three and 2 to Tony Phillips. Lansford down the line from third with 2 out. Steinbach on deck. 5-2 Dodgers in the 9th. Got him. They've done it. Like the 1969 Mets. It's the impossible dream revisited.
The 2017 World Series on the 24th of October 2017. From WBRN Radio in Boston and on the Boston Red Network. We started out with the 5th game of the 1988 World Series, in which the Dodgers won the game handily there over the Oakland A's. And we'll end the this broadcast with Game 1. There's roughly a 70% possibility there that the Game 1 winner will win the series. Now, we'll run down the 1988 series, and we'll talk about the 2017 series. That's how long the drought has been. And in the 1988 series, Vince Scully is there, and Joe Gaggiola. For those that were around in the 60s and in the 70s, NBC had a baseball game of the week. Joe Gaggiola was there. Tony Kubek was also there. And with the in 1988, Vince Scully, who had been the voice of the LA Dodgers, he retired. Last year was his last year. Hopefully he'll at least have a few words to say. Now we'll also look at who the experts, the betting crowd favors the LA Dodgers. Houston has a very good team. The starting pitching, of course, will be Mr. Kershaw and Mr. Dallas Kershaw. And we'll get into their backgrounds. But first, let's go to the 2000. Start over again. The 1988 World Series. The LA Dodgers won that series over the Oakland A's 4-1. We start out with the Game 1 was on October 15th. The LA Dodgers won that game 4-5. Alejandro Pena was the pitcher, 2-1, and the Dennis Eckersley for the Oakland A's. Game 2 was on October 16th. Mr. Oral Hershiser, 2-1, and Storm Davis for Oakland, and the A's were shut out, Dodgers 6-0. In Game 3, it was the game was played in the Oakland Coliseum. Oakland won the game 2-1 there. Rick Honeycutt, now a pitching coach, and Jay Howell was the loser there. In Game 4, also in Oakland, an unfortunate situation there that happened. The LA Dodgers 4-3, very close game there. Tim Blanchard was the winning pitcher, 3-1. Dave Stewart, 1-1, lost the game, and Jay Howell got the save. And in Game 5, which you will hear, also Oral Hershiser, 3-0. And again, a rematch with Storm Davis. Here, Oakland, LA 5-2 was the 6-6. Excuse me. Wait a minute here, just a minute here. Make sure we get things straight here. Oops. I don't have my glasses on, but I think we'll. Yeah, 5-2 was the score in that game. If we won't get into the batting here, but what we will look at is some of the current greats out there. This is from, I always like to say where we're getting our information from. This is a baseball reference here, and looking at some of the, of course, they mentioned current greats: Clayton Kershaw, Bruce Harper, Mike Trout, who are home watching it, except for Kershaw. All-time greats: Stan Musial, we remember Stan the Man, Bobby Bonds, Babe Ruth, Derek Jeter was in New York, Ken Griffey Jr., Jackie Robinson, and Hank Aaron was some of the Major League Baseball players. And some of the teams in the East at one time. The National League East, we had Atlanta at the time, the Marlins, the Mets, the Phillies, the Washington Nationals. In the Central, of course, the Cubbies that are still there, and the Cards. In the West, the National League West, the D-backs, and of course the Dodgers and the Giants of Frisco, who are also home watching it. In the East, the Orioles for the American League, the Red Sox, the Yankees, Tampa Bay, etc. And in the American League Central, the White Sox, Tigers, Kansas City, the Minnesota Twins, and one team that used to be in the National League, the Houston Astros. In the American League West. We thought we'd just get those as we start out here. We're covering this from a number of angles, from the Houston paper and the Los Angeles paper. Let me just get to. So we'll start with Houston here. How the Astros World Series team was built. Of course, they got a new owner there in Jim Crane. And Jose Altuve is the only current Astro player on the roster who was in the big leagues when Crane took over. Dallas Kershaw and George Springer are the only players on the playoff roster who were in the minor league system. That's interesting. They got, in 2012, Carlos Correa there was in the draft. 2015, Alex Bergman was there also. And there are others also there, Marvin Gomez there also, that assemble that, and the likes of Jason Van Lander, who I think they got from Detroit, It was also before the trading deadline there. The Astros picked him up. So it's just how they build these teams, some from their farm system, some not from their farm system, period. And let me just go over here to the LA Times, and this is their reporter here, Bill Pasky, I suppose. Enrique Hernandez spent the weekend watching his phone melt, inundated with hundreds of messages celebrating his free-run homer there. That sent the Dodgers to the World Series. We can't still be sitting here and thinking like, oh my gosh, I had a really cool playoff. That's what Mr. Hernandez said. Now it's time to get ready for the Astros. Charlie Culberson's wife took a block-long line, stood in a block-long line at the Dodgers merchandise store to buy a blue Dodger hair bow for the 5-year-old daughter. Anyway, this is, I guess, more on what they did here, and what we'll be listening to in game one. No, excuse me, the game. Make sure we're on the right one here with Mr. Kurt Gibson. His home run there that morning for the Astros. That would have been in Game 5. And this is 29 years ago. Kurt Gibson, the 1988 World Series home run hero, speaking by phone from Scotland. The team had answered their test very well, but now they get to finish it up. Yes, it was 29 years ago since the Dodgers were in the World Series, literally. Also been 29 years since they won one, and at that point, after rolling through the D-backs and the Cubs, with 7 wins in 8 postseason games. That's the story of the Cubbies. Of course, the Cubbies had a 100-year drought there. It's still, I'm still pinching myself every morning and every night before I go to bed, thinking in this position of bringing the World Series to L.A. Andre Ethier, the longest tenured Dodger, he's been there for 12 years. It's not going to be easy. It probably won't be pretty. The Dodgers should get all-star shortstop, of course, Seager, back on their active roster. He was injured. The Dodger fans holding tickets for Games 6 and 7 should put them in a safe place. I am of the opinion also it would go to Game 6 and 7. We can be surprised. I know a lot of people wanted a New York-LA matchup. Sorry to put a wrinkle in the plan. That's from the Astros pitcher Joe Musgrave. Well, you always want a coast-to-coast in terms of the advertisers, big markets, etc., but Houston is a big town, and Texas is a big state. If you think the Dodgers are due, check out the Astros, who have never won a World Series and have only played in one. I believe they played it when they were in the National League. No doubt. If you think the Dodgers are on a noble quest, check out the Astros, whose players have helped to re-energize their city, of course, in the wake of a devastating Hurricane Harvey. Astros outfielder George Springer said that we are going to go out there and give them every last ounce of our strength to play hard for them. The Dodgers will lead into Game 1 with their ace. They'll have the Cy Young winner, Mr. Clayton Kershaw, out there. And the Astros will, of course, counter with Dallas Kershaw. And it will be, I didn't know he was 5'6", Jose Altuve. Mr. A.J. Hinch said of Kershaw, we are not going to back down. We're not afraid of him, and no doubt they're not. where they had Dallas Kershaw there. They have Justin Vanlander also. And he has an ERA of 1.77, about as low as it goes there. And, of course, the Dodgers have Justin Turner, Yasiel Puig, and Charlie Taylor, and the rookie Corey Bellinger. So there's some very, very talented players here. The Dodgers have the lowest bullpen ERA in the regular season, not a 0.94. In a postseason with 32 strikeouts and just 2 walks. The National League Championship Series, relief pitchers held the Cubs hitless in one stretch of 29 consecutive at-bats. That's scary. And, of course, the Dodgers have the man, he's 6'7", or 6'8", Kenley Jansen. Untouchable. Brandon Morrow. And the converted starter there, Kenta Miata. Oh, boy. I'm mispronouncing his name there. But anyway, we'll have to come back. Tony Watson, let's see, just a minute here. The Dodgers reliever, of course, Tony Watson is a very good reliever. He's a good pitcher, good defense, beats hitting all day. Well, yeah. The old classic, argument was pitching and hitting, pitching against hitting. Well, good pitching, the Cubs found out, can shut down the big sluggers. Just ask Mr. Rizzo and company. The Dodgers offer no public guarantees, but quietly believe they will. Just check out the story of the game ball from the National League Championship Series, 11-1 victory over the Cubs. But the Cubs were a different team. The Cubs have had problems all along. There's no doubt about that. I asked Doc, should I give it to Kenley? And Culberson recalls, and Roberts answered, speaks volumes about the Dodgers as they hurl their way towards Los Angeles sports history. Keep the ball, Roberts told Culberson. Kenley will get another one. Well, yeah, that's true. So we'll run over here to ESPN, and this why the Dodgers are dominating, or are actually the World Series underdogs. Excuse me. Well, my guess then that there are a lot of pop-ups. Astro friends this week. It isn't that Houston Astros are super long shots against the Dodgers. The odds makers, of course, they favor the Dodgers, who went on that the other night in virtually everything, who won the most games in the regular season, no doubt about that. But this is not the regular season. The World Series, sure, they're in the World Series because they're smart. They are tried really hard, but they're also in the World Series because they're rich and spent more. They have the highest payroll in the league, $40 million, just as had in each of the past 4 seasons. That's accounting of by one accounting team's payroll. The Dodgers since 2013 have spent over $150 million on more on players than the Astros and the Cubs combined. Well, the Dodgers have a lot of high-priced players, but they don't have what they should to show for that, no doubt about it. The Dodgers have a very big stadium, not a brand, a trademark, or corporation, but as a collection of Dodgers. Each Dodger is a person, and if they collectively form the whole, the designer brand laundry, they also never stop being principally the individuals. There's nothing invincible there. Well, I'm not so sure, but anyway. The Padres signed Brandon Moore 1 year, and what is it, $2.5 million. Yeah, just little stories here about various players. A few weeks later, they signed Josh Johnson for 1 year, $1 million. But both pitchers have been very good. Then, because they defined mostly by being very hurt and signing a pair, the Padres, well, anyway. So that was the end of that story right there. So L.A. ended up with him. Josh Johnson faced exactly one batter in the Padre organization at high A before undergoing his third Tommy John surgery. Oh, boy. And Morrow, who hit DH in each of his final four seasons. This was with Toronto, where he was. And the Dodgers signed him on a minor league contract at age 32. He's now 33. He's the second best reliever in the World Series. And by his 2017, he was one of 25 most dominant receivers of the past century. Then comes a moment of the World Series when the Dodgers start teetering in the sixth inning. They have runners on second and third, and Morrow comes in from the bullpen, and it's basically lights out. So, I mean, eventually you get some good players out there, and that's what the L.A. Dodgers have finally been able to do. Rich Hill, career pitcher there, on August 2nd, 2015, made his first start for the Long Island Ducks of the Independent Atlantic League. He made $500 a week, and it shows a journeyman there, shows him carrying some chairs, but for a variety of reasons, I think the further Rich Hill ever got from the Dodgers starting rotation actually came a year earlier when Hill made his debut with the Angels. Hill had been acquired from the Red Sox for cash consideration with the White Sox. In other words, he's well-traveled around, but a very good pitcher. He never threw another pitch for the Angels. The Angels went out and traded for Joe Thatcher, who is now retired. Hill is the only pitcher in history to pitch for the Angels without getting an out. This is historically significant to the franchise. Then the Yankees briefly signed Hill. Then the Nationals briefly signed him. And then the Long Island Ducks briefly signed him. These are the kinds of stories you want to see. Meantime, rooting for Rich Hill, even as the Dodgers, is not likely rooting for Microsoft. Anyway, so these are some other stories of players here from the ESPN. And you hear more and more of this. Yasiel Puig. Always have thing involved. Oh, well, anyway. He's a Cuban. He came through Mexico, etc. there. But he's a young man that has finally settled down, literally. Let me just give you a little background. Clayton Kershaw, we'll get to the temperature story in a minute. It's going to be around 100 there. He's 6'4", 228 pounds. And how old is he? I think he's 29. He was actually born in 1988. That's Mr. Clayton Kershaw. He's a lefty, of course. And then we have Dallas Kershaw. He's 6'3", 207 pounds. He was born also in January, on January the 1st, 1988. He's 29 years old. He's out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And he has 5 years' experience. Went to college at Arkansas. So both of these characters, Kershaw being from Dallas, they're used to being in the heat, as one would say. I think Kershaw, is he a left-hander? A right-hander, isn't he? Oh, no, he's a left-hander. So we have two left-handers starting there. And let me see if we can get to this. I'm not sure if we get the temps here. I had it up here, but they will be very warm temperatures. They're expecting there in L.A. Around 100 degrees. It'll be in the high 90s. And that's the whole story of these two players and, quote-unquote, the heat and where the heat element would be. It would not bother them. Here it is right here. Hot forecast. This is game one. 70% of the teams that win game one usually win the series. Now to be, let's see, 101 forecast in Los Angeles. Excessive heat warning in advance of game one. And between the Dodgers, that'll be later today. Meanwhile, the temps expected to dip to 90 by 5 o'clock there. Kershaw says he's not. It means it's the World Series that Kershaw doesn't have any problems. Nor does Dallas. Kershaw. I think by 5 o'clock, the sun will be down there from, and this same point I made from Houston, Texas there. So it's not going to be a big deal. Normally, we think of the World Series as being played in 40-degree temperatures. Lucky if you get 50-degree temperatures. It was a little unusual last year in Wrigley Field in the 60s and in the 60s and 70s in Cleveland, where the Cubs won the World Series. The illustrated Bowie Kuhn, who used to be, that was in 1976. It was game 2 at Riverfront Stadium. That was since the Reds and the Yankees. It was the first World Series played at night, and it dipped into the 40s. Now, that's not unusual to happen in there. One final item here with the Cubbies. The pitching coach, I guess, is doomed. Chris Bosio. There were numerous people talking about the Cubs bullpen, being in a mess. And I need to get a drink of water here. But anyway, the pitching staff will probably be let go. And they also talk about a fellow that we always looked at as being the anchor of the team. Let's see, we get to that. Yeah, we saw it, but things do in fact disappear here. Let's see if we can find it again. They lost him, and he went to St. Louis, and they've had some problems ever since there. Dexter Fowler. Make no mistake, the Cubs would love to have a player such as Dexter Fowler. That was a theory we had, was the loss of Dexter Fowler. He was the glue or the cement that put the Cubs together. By him going to St. Louis was the problem the Cubs had, and they really were never able to get the continuity back that they needed. But it's not a priority. They could not have had a worse scenario at the leadoff spot in 2017. They still scored the second most runs in the league. They did, but the Cubs, and it's so unfortunate, at the last few games, they started losing games. It's sort of like L.A., but L.A. came out of it. So we'll see where that goes. Nonetheless, that'll do it for us. We started out here with Game 5. That was where L.A. actually was able to... Game 1, I'm sorry. Game 1, that was in 1988, and we ended with Game 5. We'll get that straight in a minute here. We were looking at those two. Kirk Gibson's amazing home run there. Down... to 1 out, quite literally there. Mr. Davis stole some bases, so he was on base. When Gibson literally had both legs injured, was gimping around, and was still able literally to hit the 2-run homer, and thus, as they say, the rest was history. That was Game 5. But we start off here with, we actually start out with Game 5 and then Game 1. A little bit confusing here. This will do it for us. Happy World Series, as one will say. And we'll see where it goes. Will it go 6 or 7 games? I think it shall. And we'll see how evenly matched it will be. Of course, we'll be in National League fans, Cub fans, etc. We're rooting for the Dodgers. But could the Astros pull this off? Yes, they have the second most wins in a Major League Baseball. So a lot of this will depend on bullpens shutting people down. Dallas Kershaw can be gotten to. The Yankees prove that. And we'll see. Now, this is one of the problems the Astros had. The Dodgers are well rested. But the point there is, are they too well rested? Whereas the Astros and Yankees went at it. And the final 2 games, they had actually had a Game 7. You don't see very many of those anymore. Nonetheless, good day.
Slam home run by Jose Canseco. Now make 2 changes. Ron Hassey behind the plate. And on the mound, the MVP in the League Championship Series, Dennis Eckersley. 45 saves. That really jumps out at you. And during the course of the year, he saved 8 games for Dave Stewart. And Mike Scioscia will start it off. Ball 1.
Vinny's had 8 saves that were less than an inning. 21 saves were just 1 inning. 8 saves were an inning or inning and 2/3. And an 8 save, 2 innings. That's as much as he goes.
Popped up around the bag at second. It'll be Walt Weiss. 1 down. So Eckersley with 45 saves is not a hard worker. In fact, only 15 of those 45 saves did he work more than 1 inning. And he never worked more than 2. A reminder, coming up next, except on the West Coast, local news and Saturday Night Live. 1 out in the 9th. And young Jeff Hamilton coming up. It is Hamilton who had the closest shot tonight to get the Dodgers into the game. With 1 out in the 6th inning, the Dodgers had consecutive singles by Marshall, Shelby, and Scioscia for a run. And with runners at first and second and 1 out, Hamilton hit into a double play. He fouled it away. He broke his bat in doing it. And the Dodgers really have not been heard from since.
Eckersley sidearms you, and he'll make you give ground, and he really hits that outside corner. He will come inside, but he really likes that strike on the outside corner. And there's Gibson.
0-1. In there. Seeing him with a helmet on, you have a former Oakland A's out on deck, Mike Davis. So we'll see what all that means. I doubt if he'd be up there to hit for Davis. I think that it'll be up to Davis to extend the inning to allow Gibson one last shot. 0-2. Sidearm, mean, strike 3 call. That came from around the corner.
That's what he does. He sidearms you, makes you give, and lives on that outside corner. And then if you get too close, he'll push you back, but he doesn't like to throw that many inside strikes.
So Mike Davis will come up now, one former Oakland A, to hit for another, Alfredo Griffin. 2 out, 9th inning. Oakland 4, Dodgers 3, and here is Mike Davis. Davis, like Alfredo Griffin, had a very, very difficult time adjusting over in the National League. He hit less than 200. And with that swing of his, they expected him to manufacture some home runs, and he had only 2. Time, no pitch. When Davis played at Oakland, he hit 22 home runs, 19 home runs, 24 home runs, but only 2 in the National League.
Boy, Eckersley really comes at you. He throws nothing but strikes. He challenges everybody.
Fouled away, off to the left and out of play. 0-1. By the way, Gibson is not on deck. Dave Anderson is. A footnote to that, you see 7 out of 10. Only the 87 Twins, the 84 Tigers, and the 80 Phillies have won Game 1 and the series. The ball's 1 strike. Wouldn't chase it. 1-1.
He's not going to give him a ball to pull. It'll be a mistake if it gets inside, because you can see where Hasse is setting up.
Hitters have a great tendency in the American League to chase a bad slider that he throws, but that's off the plate. Fastball. Ball 2. 2-1.
Sometimes too, Vin, when he comes, as we look at Gibson again, when he comes from that way, he kind of drops that arm and he's kind of pitching uphill, so it'll rise on you.
He's thrown that ball out there 3 consecutive times, and each time Davis refused to nibble. So the Dodgers are down to their last out. 3 balls and 1 strike to Mike Davis. Bottom of the 9th. A's 4, Dodgers 3.
If he gets on, we're going to hear some roar.
3-1. And he walked him. And look who's coming up. Fouled away. He was, complaining about the fact that with the left knee bothering him, he can't push off. Well, now he can't push off and he can't land.
He's going to use all arms. Look at his crowd on its feet. What a tribute.
4-3 A's. 2 out, 9th inning. Not a bad opening act. Mike Davis, by the way, has stolen 7 out of 10. If you're wondering about Lasorda throwing the dice again. Fouled away again.
And he's staying on an outside corner. He's not going to give him a ball to pull. With Davis, he just missed. But here's 2 quick strikes, both fastballs that kind of tail away at the outside part. Hasse is not even flirted with the inside part of that plate.
You saw Dave Duncan gesturing. He was gesturing to Carney Lansford at third. 0-2 to Gibson. The infield is back with 2 out and Davis at first. Now Gibson during the year, not necessarily in this spot, but he was a threat to bunt. No way tonight. No wheels.
They're plenty deep in the outfield and a lot of room. They're playing him straight away in center field. Look at it. Right down the line. He's a threat now with 2 strikes.
No balls, 2 strikes. 2 out. Little nubber foul. And it had to be an effort to run that far. Gibson was so banged up, he was not introduced. He did not come out onto the field before the game.
You can really see the limp. He's not driving that ball. It was by him. Let's see. He's really he almost has to talk to his legs and say, hey, let's go. We got to get out of here.
It's one thing to favor one leg, but you can't favor 2.
No way. And that's what he's trying to do. He really is.
0-2 to Gibson. Ball 1. And a throw down to first. Davis just did get back. Good play by Ron Hasse using Gibson as a screen. He took a shot at the runner, and Mike Davis didn't see it for that split second, and that made it close.
A lot of times what you do, you'll give a sign to the first baseman, say, now be there. They call it now be there play. If I get the ball, I'm going to throw it. 14 fastballs in a row. That's all he's been throwing.
There goes Davis, and it's fouled away. So Mike Davis, who had stolen 7 out of 10 and carrying the tying run, was on the move.
They wanted to give Gibson a good shot at it with 2 strikes, but with the 2 strikes, Davis a threat, as we said, because the Blue Pit will score that big run.
Gibson shaking his left leg, making it quiver like a horse trying to get rid of a troublesome fly. 2-2. Mike Scioscia can only sit now and sweat it out. He led off the inning and popped up. Tony La Russa is 1 out away from win number 1.
Here's the big pitch. He's got to make it happen on this one.
2 balls and 2 strikes with 2 out.
Those extra steps that Davis will get if the count goes to 3-2 are very big. So Hasse and Eckersley want that pitch of decision right here.
There he goes, way outside. He's stolen it.
Hasse started to throw and kind of bumped Gibson, but it was way too late. Davis was way down there, almost as if he could have walked in. Not a bad pitch to handle for Hasse outside. Now watch when he starts to throw. Look at Gibson. And Harvey says, no, he had the base stolen.
So Mike Davis, the tying run, is at second base with 2 out. Now the Dodgers don't need the muscle of Gibson as much as a base hit. And on deck is the leadoff man, Steve Sax. 3-2. Sax waiting on deck, but the game right now is at the plate.